Good evening. Welcome to the public forum for Monday the 10th of August 2026. PF1, recording of public forum. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice and will be made publicly available on Albury City's website. Attendance of this meeting is taken as consent to being recorded and included in the live stream. Any person who does not consent to being recorded may choose to leave this meeting. Members of the public are reminded to refrain from making defamatory remarks or disclosing personal information, noting that Albury City is not responsible for comments made by individuals. Recordings and live streams are protected by copyright and remain the property of Albury City. No part of the meeting may be copied, recorded, reproduced or transmitted without the prior written consent of the Chief Executive Officer. PF2, conflict of interest declaration received by the Chair. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary, less than significant conflict of interest. Completing it now and I'll hand it over. Person related to making a submission. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr McGrath, have you got any?
No, nothing further, Mr Mayor. Thank
you. Without further ado, I will invite PF3 speakers. PF3.1, Charlie Mitchell, CM 13.3, Draft Compliance and Enforcement Policy. Public exhibition submission. Speaking against recommendation. Thank you, Mr Mitchell.
Thank you, councillors, mayor and staff and community. Every great community is built upon an unwritten covenant that those who hold power will use it to guard the peace, the dignity and the quiet enjoyment of those that they represent. When councillors vote to approve a development but safeguard it with conditions, you are protecting and standing up for your community. Yet tonight you are presented with a draft compliance policy that asks this chamber to retreat from that policy. It is a document heavy with reservations, exceptionally well crafted in bureaucracy. It lays out 100 quiet exits, page after page, explaining why council might hesitate, why council might look away, why council might choose to do nothing when a resident calls requesting action. Albury's policy reference to Ride versus Eckert does not give council discretion to make its own conditions meaningless. A condition remains a condition. The community should never be left believing that the protection disappears simply because enforcement becomes inconvenient. Council cannot speak with one voice when approving a development. These conditions will protect you. And then another voice using compliance policy discretion. Oh, we don't need to enforce that condition. The true measure of a council is not how well it protects its discretion, but how faithfully it uses that discretion and power to protect its people. What becomes of the rule of law when the conditions imposed in the light of day are permitted to evaporate in the shadows of enforcement? When a policy teaches a council to seek justification for inaction, it breaks the circle of trust with the community. It tells the vulnerable that they are on their own. It tells the community that the promises made in this chamber expire the moment the ink is dry. If council's word means something on the day of the development that is approved, it must mean something on the day a resident asks the council to honour it. I am suggesting that the council demand a policy that does not search for excuses, but a policy that gives teeth to your decisions, honours your promises and protects our community. When rules protect the institution more readily than they protect the individuals, those rules deserve to be rewritten. This policy supports the administration and dilutes the power of conditions set by council to protect the community. What I seek is true leadership. Leadership that does not seek the path of least resistance, but builds a shield for the community and the public good. Reject this policy and support residents and ratepayers to ensure that council's conditions of consent endorsed by councillors can be relied upon by the community and build trust. The highest purpose of local government is not administration, it is stewardship. Stewardship of place, of amenity, of fairness and of the trust of the people. Councillors, When council gives its word to protect its community, let there never come a day when bureaucracy has the power to make that word mean nothing. Let it be said, decades from tonight, that when the character of this council was tested, you did not hide behind policy. You stood with your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mitchell. Question, Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Mayor Mac. Thank you for your presentation, Mr Mitchell. Always quite informative of some of your rationale. Given that you've worked in local government before, given that we are governed by rules, regulation, legislation that we work with every day, can you give us a couple of examples of how you've come to what you've come up with tonight? Sorry.
I've bumped into a few people that have issues with compliance. One in particular, about a couple of months back, was the son of the father who had a dispute with the local neighbour, and the council had on the plans of consent a privacy wall between the two developments. It took 4 years for council to act, and it only acted when his father had to engage a barrister at cost, considerable cost, to force the council to actually implement the privacy of the wall that was on the original plans of consent. And that's just one of those things. Look, the compliance officers have a difficult job. I'm not disputing that. But when there's a lot of excuses provided in a policy that you guys are going to, that the councillors are going to adopt, I think there needs to be a bit of a balance there.
Sure, Councillor Baldwin.
Given that, as I said before, the council and the compliance teams are governed by rules that are made by legislation, and they're doing their jobs. The timing issue, I probably get that little bit, I understand that. But what I would be very concerned about is that making statements about rules and regulations that are put in place to protect both the organisation and our residents, it's a very long bow. Look, I understand where you're coming from, and our people in the building do what they need to do every day. So if we don't worry about the rules and have anarchy, well, where does that lead us? So what I want to know is, what is really the guts of what you're saying, how you've got to this?
So I'm saying rewrite the policy in favour of the community, still have the rules there, and but it's a last resort that you look at dismissing the complaint. What also concerns me is that there's no procedure attached to this policy, whereas in the next matter you're considering the policies there plus the procedural documents. So a policy is fine, but it's fully informed when you can actually see how the council are going to implement via the procedures. It's a loophole that exists in local government that, whilst it might be fine and dandy on a policy level, the way the council implements it at the procedural level must comply with the policy, but there's grey areas in that area.
Yeah.
What I would say is that the grey areas normally, through the process, normally get fixed up. I'm a big stickler for the rules. I think most people know me pretty well that I'm a stickler for the rules, and if you don't do the right thing, you cop the whack, and I'm happy for that. There's some people in the communities nowadays that don't adhere to rules, and they don't want to obey the rules, and they don't want to listen to people that are put in place, like our compliance officers, and we have issues with dogs and cats, and we have lots of things in the world, but they're just doing their job as part of the process. So what I'd be very concerned about with these statements that get made about policy and process is that I don't want people to suddenly start acting like sovereign citizens. You know, we make the rules and this is how we go about it. Because I think the rules are pretty good, and I think most people in the community go by the rules. Yes, there are areas at times that the rules don't get properly looked at. But there's the appeals process, and it goes through the process, and our compliance teams and our teams within the building do everything they do to make our residents' life as quick, easy and compatible as possible, because they've got a job to do, and I get the residents want to get their things done, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but I can guarantee you from my view, I think we do a pretty good job with what we do with our compliance, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in at all times.
Having sat on the other side of the table in an ongoing dispute for 2 years, almost 2 years, I dispute those comments because when requested for documents to support council's decision, council staff decisions, they have been denied. Notes that have been taken at meetings have been denied. There's a range of matters that constrain a person from actually getting to the decision made by council through, what would you say, through use of council's power.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, and Mr Mitchell, I'm well aware of the subject you are talking about, and from my recollection, only just recently with a meeting with Councillor King and myself, that I did say to email me the relevant documents, and I would follow it up at the council level for that said person.
Yes, I take that on board, and I appreciate that. I would like to see, though, that nobody has to go through that process, because it's arduous, long, and if it was my mother that had to go through what a client that I'm working with had to go through, I would be disgusted with the approach that council's taking.
But in saying that, Mr Mitchell, I get where you're coming from, but my job as an elected representative of the community is to follow up on your behalf. If you have an issue, I'm more than happy to bring it to the chamber and more than happy to bring it to the executive to get a resolution on your behalf, whether it be right or wrong.
I'd just like the policy to be amended so it is more orientated towards residents and the community rather than the council administration.
Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Mayor Mack. Thank you for your presentation, Mr Mitchell, and thank you for your submission on this matter. My question to you is, I suppose, one, have you read the report that we're considering tonight? I assume you would have. So the report produced by the staff addresses your submission. I don't know that I've ever seen a report which has addressed a single submission in such detail, actually, in my time on council. And so my question to you is, have you read that, and have you read the response to the issues you've raised, and are there specific items where you take issue with the response, for example?
No, I actually made a mistake in that my information was more at procedural level, and I agree with the council's staff's assessment of that. I realised that there was a bigger issue at heart, which I only came to realise last week, and that was the power that's been transferred to the council officers. The discretionary power is at a high level, and it dilutes the decisions that at times, councillors make consent conditions.
Sure.
The staff suggest that the policy has been written largely in line with the advice from the Ombudsman, the model Ombudsman guidelines. Is the issue then, therefore, rather at a state level, that the advice from the Ombudsman is, in your view, giving too much discretionary power to council officers and not enough to the elected body?
The language that's used in the policy document gives what I'd call a misleading impression that the staff have the power to, basically dilute or push aside the consent conditions. That is true in certain aspects, but I don't think the flavour that's coming through from the Ombudsman is truly reflected in the council policy. I mean, it requires quite an extensive level of detail to read the Ombudsman stuff, which I've done, but pulling it all together and creating a policy that is orientated to support the community, I think would be a step in the right direction, in that you build the trust with the community. You just don't wave them off and say, "Oh, just too hard, you know, don't worry, it's just you, you know, you're affected by this, but there's nobody else." I don't see enough orientation towards the community and residents.
Councillor Hudson,
Final question. I'm a proponent of not reinventing the wheel where we don't have to. Are there any local governments in New South Wales with compliance policies that you think are more in line with that community-focused approach that you're endorsing?
I haven't done enough research in that area. I have actually created a draft policy orientated that way, but it still needs a lot of work. And I suppose that's not my job. I'm hoping that we can see some decision here tonight that, you know, asks the question from staff to revisit the policy and try and make those amendments to support the community.
No further questions, Mr Mitchell. Just a quick one. In response to Councillor Bullivant's statement about follow-up by councillors, a lot of us in this room become the levers for addressing what you're saying in terms of long-term claims or long-term complaints. Don't you see us as that body that's able to address those concerns, or do you think that's a failing as well?
I know. I have faith in our councillors. There's no question about that. What I concern is that you know, there's a policy you shouldn't have to. The policy should be right at the very start. We shouldn't have to go and, you know, bug the councillors.
No, that's fine. No, thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and we'll consider the report during the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillors, I declare the council meeting for Monday the 10th of August open at 6:18 p.m. Opening affirmation and acknowledgement of country. Councillor Bullivant.
Thank you, Mayor Mack. We gather to represent the people of Albury who have entrusted us with this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, wisdom, common sense. May our personal values give us honesty and courage to serve our community effectively and with respect for all.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
We would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today, and pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community.
Thank you. CM2 recording and webcasting a meeting. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice and will be made publicly available on Albury's website. Attendance to this meeting is taken as consent to being recorded, including the live stream. Any person who does not consent to being recorded may choose to leave the meeting. Members of the public are reminded to refrain from making defamatory statements or disclosing personal information, noting that Albury City is not responsible for comments made by individuals. Recordings and live streams are protected by copyright and remain the property of Albury City. No part of the meeting may be copied, recorded, reproduced or transmitted without the prior written consent of the Chief Executive Officer. CM3, Conflict of Interest Declaration received by the Chair. Mr McGrath.
Thank you, Mayor Mack. I do have the declaration from Councillor Glacken. It's a non-pecuniary, less than significant conflict. The reason given is the person, a relative, is making a submission in respect of report item CM 13.3 Councillor Glacken indicates her intent to remain in the room, participate and debate and vote.
Thank you.
And the
Advice?
advice to the meeting. The Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, Section 10.4, requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on Council's website, the Customer Service Centre and at the back of the chamber during meetings. In determining development applications, councillors must consider the relevant planning matters under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. These matters, as set out in section 4.15 brackets 1 of the Act, are detailed in the Council Officer's report. Under section 375A of the Local Government Act 1993, a division must be called for any motion relating to a planning decision. A planning decision includes decisions made under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, such as those relating to development applications and planning instruments, but excludes orders made under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act.
Thank you. Apologies. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you. I'd like to remove the recommendation that Council receive, note and accept the apology of Councillor Cameron and grant leave of absence for the meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Bullivant.
Happy to second, Mayor Mac.
Thank you. Have put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Okay, we're up to CM 4.2, attendance of councillors by meeting by audio visual link. Thank you, councillors. Councillor King.
I'd like to move that Council receive, note and accept the attendance of Councillor Bukowski via audio-visual link for the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Welcome, Councillor Bukowski. Okay, CM5, Merrill Minute. There isn't a Merrill Minute. Action plans. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Hudson, did you have a question? You want to move the motion?
I have a question.
You have a question before we move the motion?
Happy for it to be moved first.
Okay. Councillor Callaghan.
I'd like to move the following action plans be received and noted. 1, action plans completed since previous meeting for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress. And 4, long-term issues more than 3 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bullivant.
Happy to second, Mayor Mac.
Thank you. Councillor Hudson, did you wish to ask a question?
I do, Mayor Mac, through you to the most relevant member of staff.
Yep.
I was wondering if it would be possible to have the CBD bike loop included in the action plans item as a standing item, where it goes, whether it's in actions in progress or from awaiting response or long-term issues. I'm not sure, but my understanding is that we're currently looking at about a 14-month delay on this project, which seems to involve Transport for New South Wales. So I was hoping that it could be included, so that councillors can remain appraised of this project, which, to my knowledge, really began back in 2007 or 8 with the CBD master plan process. And so here we are 17 years later and we still don't have it. So I would say that's a long-term issue.
Ms Leopold.
Thanks for the question. Councillor Hudson, through you, Mayor Mac. That is correct. We have experienced significant delays, some of which relate to a change in requirements for how cycle paths interact with intersections, which has been driven through State Government Transport for New South Wales. We continue to work closely with them, but it has definitely affected the project timelines. Be more than happy to provide that on the action items as a regular update.
Comfortable? Yep. Thank you, Ms Leopold. Okay, happy to put that motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM7, confirmation minutes of previous meeting held on the 27th of July 2026. Councillor King.
Happy to move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday 27th of July 2026 at 6:58pm be confirmed.
Thank you. Seconder, thanks. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor King, did you wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you.
Okay, no questions or debate. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM8, reports from community forums. We have none. And CM9, notice of motion, notice of rescission. Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Mayor Mack. With my fellow councillors' indulgence, I'd like to move a minimally amended motion, which simply removed a section, and I'll read it out. Is this the updated one? Yeah, thank you. So I move that Council 1 notes that Albury City adopted an interim infrastructure contributions plan in July 2025, which increased contributions made under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979. 2 notes that prior to the adoption of the interim ICP, Albury City had relatively low Section 7.1 contributions in comparison to peer regional cities such as Wagga Wagga, Orange, Goulburn and Queanbeyan. 3, acknowledges that work is currently underway to prepare a new infrastructure contributions plan. 4, acknowledges that while Section 7.11 contributions don't directly fund operating expenditure, they reduce the extent to which existing ratepayers subsidise growth by reducing reliance on borrowing or other sources of infrastructure funding. 5, notes that the financial modelling prepared to support Council's proposed special rate variation does not include the potential impact of a future local infrastructure contributions plan, as the new plan has not yet been adopted. And 6, requests that the Chief Executive Officer prepare a report modelling this is where the change comes in, development contributions under Section 7.11 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 this is not the amended motion, sorry. I've removed point 2. Thank you. So 6AI, the maximum level currently permitted under the IPART essential works cap list, i.e. $30,000, and B, for this scenario, it should read, the extent to which growth-related infrastructure costs would be received through developer contributions. 2, the impact on Council's long-term financial sustainability and infrastructure funding requirements. 3, any reduction in the funding burden that would otherwise fall on Council's general revenue, borrowings or other funding sources. And 4, any implications for special rate variation, for future special rate variation requirements.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hudson, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I do, thank you, Mayor Mack. I acknowledge that it's quite a long motion and it does seem quite complicated, but essentially this is a call for information. I'm not interested in relitigating previous decisions of Council through this. I'm simply asking that we look at the impact that increasing developer contributions would have on our future financial position before we make a decision for an SRV. And my reasoning for that is we need, and we've spoken at length, I think everyone in this chamber has spoken at length, that the need to leave no stone unturned and look at what we can do to minimise the impact on our residents, on our ratepayers of an SRV. And to me, this is a fairly meaningful stone that I do think at this stage we have left unturned, because ultimately, and as acknowledged in the motion, the Section 7.11, previously known as Section 94 contributions, don't directly fund Council's operating expenditure. However, if we have infrastructure requirements which do result from the growth, and we have seen significant growth over the years since 2014 when the old plan was adopted, in Thurgoona and Willinga especially, that infrastructure has to have been paid from somewhere. And as we've already acknowledged when we adopted our interim ICP back in July of last year, we have charged historically quite low amounts compared to our peers. When that plan was adopted in 2014, we were charging under Section 94 around $9,000 to $10,000, and that has increased over the years, but not meaningfully. And now, with the new plan that we adopted last year, we have increased it to $20,000, which is fantastic. However, there's a lot further to go. So I'm aware, because I've spoken with councillors from other LGAs around the state, for example, in Ballina, they charge developers around $50,000 per lot in their growth areas. This is a quite an extreme example, but I'm aware that in the Illawarra, Wollongong Council, in their West Dapto area, they charge developers $96,000 per lot, while we have been charging developers around $11,000 per lot. Now, obviously, those values have to be justified to the regulatory tribunal, and a plan needs to be in place so that we can make our case for the infrastructure contributions that we require in order to deliver the works that are permitted under the IPART essential works cap. But the fact of the matter is that over the years we have foregone, in my estimation, millions of dollars in revenue that we could have collected from developers, and we haven't done that, and we can't get that money back now. But if we are going forward with a SRV plan to the community saying we think that we need to charge 42%, whatever the value is, without looking at what the impact on our future financial position of increased infrastructure contributions would be, then really we're saying to our community, we're asking you to pay, in my view, more than their fair share when we should be receiving revenue from the housing developers, which are benefiting immensely from the enormous growth that we're seeing in Thurgoona and Willinga. So I'll leave it there, and I'll look forward to the debate.
Thanks, Councillor Hudson. Question, Councillor Callaghan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Mac. Just looking at the proposed operating budget, I can see, and there's been an update too, that we have $150,000 in year 26-27, 120,000 of that as income through grant funding, and 30,000 from Albury City. Can you elaborate on what that 150,000 is getting our community in regards to the infrastructure contributions plan review?
Ms. Leopold.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Callaghan, through you, Mayor Mac. So, undertaking a new infrastructure contributions plan is quite a technical piece of work. Traditionally, you would engage a specific contributions planner within your team to assist with that modelling and mathematical calculations. Albury has been out several times to try and find a contributions planner to assist us with this work and hasn't been successful. Subsequently, that funding, a proportion of that, which is grant funded, $120,000, will be used for the engagement of a consultant, which is now the preferred pathway to resource this project, as we'd like to keep moving with it as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Councillor. Councillor Bullen, question, and Councillor Bukowski next.
I'm not sure, Mayor Mac. Councillor Bukowski can go if she likes.
You're not sure of your question?
I'm sure I'm a question, but you said if Councillor Bukowski is next. Okay.
No, you're next.
Okay, thank you. Question through you, Mayor Mac, to the relevant member of staff. I would suspect that we would be looking at all this sort of avenues in the back workings of the organisation. Have we done modelling already? And I see in the CEO's statement about this motion that we're doing a lot of this work anyway. Can I get some clarification on that?
Ms. Leopold.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Bullivant, through you, Mayor Mac. There's a number of pieces of work that go into understanding what infrastructure you will require that is related to growth. Councillors will remember that we've adopted a number of significant pieces of work just throughout 2025, including, for example, the water and wastewater master plans, which identifies things like population growth, forecast volumes, those types of things that assist us in preparing the right type of infrastructure. I've also adopted the social infrastructure strategy, which helps us identify, based on population, the amount of things like community centres that are required, for example, sports facilities. We've also adopted the Thurgoona Willinga Precinct Structure Plan, which assists and guides us in terms of growth, zoning and density, so that assists us as well in the modelling around informing an updated infrastructure contributions plan. So certainly there's been a lot of work underway over a number of years, a lot of which was adopted by Council last year and allows us to use that as a foundation to prepare for the updated infrastructure contributions plan.
Comfortable? Councillor Bukowski, question?
Yeah, thank you. This is just more procedural because I can't actually see the bottom part of the motion. Is this motion still seeking to model a full cost recovery scenario?
No, that's been deleted in the amendment.
All right.
Comfortable?
Right. Yep.
No worries. Thank you. Councillor Callaghan, you have another question?
I do. Thank you, Mayor Mac, and thank you for elaborating in my previous question. I suppose it relates around a time frame and what this really looks like. You know, it's been raised where we're looking at the SRV at the moment. We're doing this concurrently. It was started in 25. It was supposed to come back in 2026. I can see in the budget it's now for 26-27. What is the time frame? Obviously, I know we need to engage a consultant, but I think time is of the essence with this, and I think that this motion is perhaps missing a time frame. So kind of wondering from staff perspective, what does that look like?
Ms Leopold.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Callaghan, and through you, Mayor Mack. With the notice of motion now changing not to be full cost recovery, but rather it seems to model the an upper limit of $30,000 per lot. I'd need to go back and see what that looked like in terms of a time frame. That's different from a full cost recovery model based on complex infrastructure modelling. What I would say though is that the $30,000 cap only relates to areas of land that have been classified as greenfield land. And in order to do that, there would need to be an amendment to Schedule 2 of the Local Infrastructure Contributions Ministerial Direction 2012 to include the nominated land. Now, part of the work we've been doing has been engaging with the Department of Planning around how we may seek to have areas of growth in Thurgoona-Willinga classified as greenfield land. The criteria we've been given by the department is that in order to be able to be classified as greenfield land, firstly, the land needs to be newly zoned for residential purposes or imminently about to be rezoned. That land not previously have been used or zoned for urban purposes. That land needs to be located on the fringe of an existing urban area. That the land is expected to be developed in the short to medium term, 5 to 10 years. That it has a high infrastructure requirement and little existing infrastructure. And that it needs to demonstrate an increased contribution rate is required to fund the infrastructure. Now, on the face value of that, we don't meet some of that criteria. However, in our discussions with the department, they've said they'll work with us, and it's not necessarily that you must meet every single criteria, but it's sort of a collective. So discussions are underway to see if we could work towards that $30,000. In the meantime, I might need to check, it's almost a finance question, Mr McGrath, around the modelling of $30,000 per lots released.
Thanks, Mayor Mack. As a follow-up, I'm aware that the acting CFO, who's on leave at the moment, but he did do I'll call it a quick and dirty calculation, where if we look at what we're getting nowadays in the way of developer contributions, it's about $2 million per annum. If we assumed that we were going to double it, which we wouldn't because of the constraints that Miss Leopold has alluded to, but if we were to assume we were going to double it and receive $4 million per annum and index it to CPI after that was introduced, what the modelling, that's really simplified modelling, indicates that such a change would have little impact on council's underlying operating result, but would reduce general fund debt by approximately $22 million by the end of the 10-year period of the long-term financial plan. Now, what that means is under the current LTFP, if we don't have any form of interventions, it suggests that the general fund debt would grow to approximately $250 million at the end of the 10-year period. What this small body of work suggests is that that 250 would be reduced by about $22 million. The impact on the operating result, essentially, and I don't have the exact figures, but it would be the interest on those borrowings over that 10-year period, and it'd be all different sorts of amounts depending upon what was drawn down in any given year. So I can't give you the exact figures, but it would be minimal. So I guess the point's made that developer contributions can be used to fund growth-related infrastructure and reduce borrowing requirements. So if we don't have the funds to cover it, we borrow. It doesn't mean we have $22 million cash at the end of that period. It simply means we have $22 million less in debt. Does that make sense?
Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Mayor Mack. My question is through to the most relevant member of staff, just in relation to that discussion of the greenfield classification, because I'm actually quite shocked to hear what Ms Leopold has told us this evening. Just as by way of preamble, essentially 6AI, the whole point was to circumvent all of this discussion of minutiae in detail and just say, what would it be if it was the 30,000 without having to do huge amounts of calculations. And thank you for your answer, Mr. CEO. But it sounds like what Ms Leopold was saying is that Thurgoona Willinga may well not be classifiable as greenfield because it was rezoned so long ago. Is that the case?
Ms Leopold.
That's potentially the case, Councillor Hudson. But as I said, we continue to work with the department, and so far the conversations have been encouraging that they understand it is a significant growth area for us that requires investment in growth-related infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. I think the community would be shocked to hear that it may not be considered greenfield, given that it is literally greenfields. So.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. I speak against this motion not because I want to speak against infrastructure contributions and an increase in those. I speak for them. But I can't support this motion. It's a little better now that we're not looking at a full cost recovery model, because had we been doing that, well, how do you deal with that? Every time there would be a development, you would have to redo the calculations, because every development is different, every block is different. So thankfully that's out of there. We already know that this is work underway. We also already know from one of the reports at the very end of our meeting tonight that we have staff vacancies at 14%. We do know that the amounts that are charged for developer contributions are less than we really need them to be. But the way people talk about we need to charge the developers more because they need to be paying for it is a little bit worrying to me, because at the end of the day, whilst the developer pays that fee up front, it ultimately becomes a cost to the person who buys that house. That's how it works. Those people have to pay for it in the long run. It goes through the developer, but ultimately the people we're trying to attract here pay for that. Now, the report talks about, or the motion from Councillor Hudson talks about such peer regional cities as Wagga Wagga, Orange, Goulburn and Queanbeyan, none of which are on the border with Victoria, and none of them have to compete with Wodonga for people coming to live in our region. So people who want to come and live in Albury Wodonga can choose to go and live in Wodonga. They can choose other smaller towns as well. And the comment of don't allow any stone to be unturned, I agree entirely. But the reality is that stone is already targeted by our staff, and that was work that we have done previously. The reason this hasn't been able to be completed by our staff is, well, there's a couple of really strong reasons. One is because they haven't been able to attract the person to do that work, and the plan B is that we use a consultant. None of us likes that, but that's the reality. The other is because our staff are busy undertaking all the other things that they have to do, including the work with the special rates variation. And on balance, the special rates variation is much more time critical, I believe, to our council, that work on whether we should or shouldn't, because if we're going to, then we have to deal with that very quickly. So my suggestion, my take on all of this is that, yes, I agree with the sentiment, but I do not believe we should be supporting this tonight, and I cannot support this tonight on the basis that we need it to go through all the hoops and balances across all the hurdles it needs to pass and come out with the right solution alongside all the other work that needs to be done with council as well. I would much prefer us to vote this down tonight and ask instead for an update presentation by the staff albeit a verbal update presentation by the staff in another couple of months as to how we're going. Yes, it needs to be done, but not this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Speaker for, Councillor King, and the speaker against, Councillor Bukowski after Councillor King.
I thank Councillor Hudson for amending his motion. Originally, I could see that there was power of work that was involved there, but I don't see the harm in sending a very clear signal to our community that we are looking at every possible option. It has been confirmed by the CEO note in terms of the work currently happening behind the scenes. Given we've already gone down the path of seeking advice from the department, I think part of it is already happening, and I don't see a reason to oppose this formal report to give a very clear indication of where we're at and what the scenarios are, and even any implication for future special rate variation requirements. Maybe that may not be known. Maybe the answer is simply we don't yet have enough information to make that decision. But I think the request of a report, I can't see the harm in that, and I think it gives a very clear indication to our community that we are looking at all options, but trying to take away additional pressure and stress from our team, who I know are short-staffed and very busy.
Thank you. Speaker against, Councillor Bukowski.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I do agree with the underlying principle that growth absolutely should contribute fairly towards the infrastructure that it requires. And I don't think that any councillor is going to disagree with that objective. I do have some concerns with this motion. My concern isn't with requesting further information. My concern is that the motion is framed around assumptions that may not accurately reflect either the legal frameworks or the financial realities of developer contributions. My reading, the inference that I've drawn from this motion, is that it does suggest that higher developer contributions could reduce further reliance on borrowings or general revenue, or potentially even future special rate variations. And this may be true to a certain extent, but I don't think it's a straightforward comparison. It is really important to note that developer contributions are restricted funds. They do have to be spent on infrastructure for which they are collected. They simply can't just be redirected into council's operating budget or used to address historic underfunding or ongoing service delivery costs. I'm also a bit concerned that the motion asks council officers to model a legislative framework that doesn't currently exist. In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with responsibilities, but if council is...
Point of order, Councillor Bukowski. Councillor Hudson.
No, it doesn't. I removed that.
That component was removed, Councillor Bukowski.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway,
Thank you.
Yeah, I still have concerns around. I just have some concerns with this motion. I just think the inference that is sort of detailing that we may not need to enter into a special rate variation simply because we can increase developer contributions is probably not fair in our community, and that's where my concern does lay. So I'm not going to be supporting the motion as it stands.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan, you have a question?
I have two, if I may. The first one was I actually just asked for a time frame before, and thank you so much for your answer, Deputy CEO. I was just wondering if you could clarify that. Kind of went into a financial space, and I don't believe that was actually answered.
Ms. Leopold.
Look, the original motion we would have to thoroughly map out, and that's why such a long time frame was given. With this one, for example, we know how many lots are roughly released per year, but again, it wouldn't be at the $30,000 rate. The other part is that if we were to apply some assumptions around developer contributions, the way that trickles through over time isn't instant. So they're set at the point where a DA is lodged. And so sometimes those DAs may take a year or so to work through the system if they're complex subdivisions. So it's hard for us to say at which point we would see that $30,000 kick in. But if we were just to apply $30,000 over roughly 400 lots per year, it would be reasonably simple to come up with that. However, there are some further assumptions in the scenarios below, and I would just, if we're talking about a 10-year time frame, some of those assumptions include growth rate and assumptions that the growth rate would continue at what it is, and and things like inflation and those sorts of things would be built into that. So we could do it in a reasonably quick time frame, but I'd just caution that it's not necessarily going to give the entire picture.
Following that question.
So this report that's been asked for could be done in a fairly quick time frame, in the order of a couple of months.
Mr. CEO, correct me if you think it's different, but I think we could in a couple of weeks do something, but it would be very simple, and the assumptions over 10 years, we couldn't. Yeah, don't. You're exactly right.
I'm just curious to know, like, how long is it? Piece of string. We talked about the CBD bike loop went on for a decade. You know, like, just if we're going to approve this, I just want to know: is it the information going to be accessible to our community within a fairly decent time frame, given that there's so much work going on around the SRV? And I think this is important information. So just wanting some clarity. I won't hold you to 2 weeks, but if you said a month, you know, that's fair.
Mr. McGrath, did you have any data?
Look, I think, you know, the Deputy CEO is trying to be able to do it as quickly as possible, but I'd like to see under-promising and over-delivering, if we can use that terminology, but it sounds like it could be done in, you know, the 4 to 6 week period. By the time you prepare the analysis, do some peer review, get it into a report. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baker, question?
Thank you, Mayor Mack. It wouldn't be that hard, I would imagine, just to apply some of these notional amounts to the SRV calculations anyway, without going into great depth. Is that a fair question?
Ms. Leopold, is that a fair question?
I'm not sure I can answer that around the SRV element, but I think a simple analysis around those scenarios is doable, as Mr. McGrath said, in 4 to 6 weeks or a bit further.
Mr. McGrath?
Sorry, through you, Mayor Mack, just to be really clear, if I gave the example earlier of simply doubling, it'd be a similar principle. The impact on the annual operating result would be minimal. It's more about the amount of borrowings that you might be exposed to. And therefore, the real impact at the operating result on an annual basis is the interest payable on those borrowings during that period. So it would be, I'd suggest, quite minimal in the overall scheme of things.
Councillor Baker, follow-up?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mack. Follow-up question. Yeah, so probably my question, and why is the special rate variation included in this if we want to just know about the extent to and how much could be raised by changes to the developer contribution? So I'm just unsure why the special rate variation part is in there. Can't we just ask the question with how it would impact that?
Councillor Hudson's happy to answer your question. Councillor Baker?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Baker. It's there because I think it's the reason we're asking the question in the first place. It's the salient thing that we're dealing with right now. The community are being posed a question: do you want your rates increased by a really substantial amount? And my suggestion, to not to enter into a debate with Councillor Bukowski's point, but I know we're not going to avoid an SRV by increasing our developer contributions, but if there was an impact which meant that we could seek a lower SRV by increasing those contributions, then wouldn't we want to know about that? That's really the point.
Follow-up?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to know all reasons why a special rate variation could be lower, non-existent, and whatever, and calculate scenarios into that. But whether we have to go into deep economic analysis every time to find out how it might look, I don't know if we have to be that accurate. But yeah, bit of a funny one for me. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, you have one more question and I have speaker 4.
I do indeed, thank you. My question is with reference to the intention of this motion. My understanding of the intention of this motion is to determine whether or not we will be able to apply for a greater developer cost or charge or contribution. And if that's the case, it will be some considerable time until we're able to determine that. So what is the point of doing this work at the moment? Because it'll all be hypothetical. It'll be hypothetical. So what is the intention of this report? Is it to help us or to assist with a future application for an increased developer contribution? Or is it simply to provide us with a hypothetical figure that may assist us in lieu of a proportion of a special rates variation?
Councillor Gluckin, it would appear you're asking the mover, but Councillor Hudson, you happy to answer that in your reply at the end of the motion?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'd love a staff answer.
A staff answer.
Absolutely, because my
Councillor
understanding
Blackman asking about the intent of the motion, and I have moved the motion, not the staff, so surely the intent is
Okay,
mine.
so the intent of the
not the
work
staff.
that would have to be done, undertaken, to what end would that work be undertaken relative to an SRV or the desire of increasing the developer contribution? And with the timing, 2 or 3 weeks, a month's time to come up with these figures, will that help us increase our developer contribution?
Ms Leopold, did you have a response to that?
Sorry, Councillor Gluckin, could you phrase that again for me?
This report is about a developer contribution. It's been said that it would take about a month to provide, if this was agreed to provide figures that have been requested in this motion. Will that assist us to get to increase our developer contributions or not?
I believe Mr McGrath wants to give it a go.
Mr Mayor, if I may, if I follow the thrust of where I think Councillor Glacken's going, the reality is, from the point of view of satisfying IPART with any proposed future increase, you would need to do the entire body of work associated with the project that Ms Leopold has already referenced. So that would mean it wouldn't be done until sometime after the consultant had deliberated, undertaken their work. What this would do, this body of work would do, is potentially give a feel for the sort of revenue streams that council could expect from developer contributions if this was pursued, recognising the constraints that Ms Leopold has already referenced as well. But I have to come back to the finance question about the impact on the operating result. The early analysis, and I suspect this analysis would be even more conservative, the impact at the annual operating result issue would be minimal. And I guess that's the issue that the financial sustainability program, or the efficiencies and the other work that we're doing, and potentially an SRV are going to go towards addressing.
Just to clarify for me.
Sure.
In essence, it would be a potential increase in developer contributions, because it has to be approved, a potential developer contribution increase that potentially assists the overall finances of council, which won't be known until it's approved.
Mr McGrath?
Yes.
Thank you.
Speaker 4, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you. I support Councillor Hudson's motion because it asks Council to properly understand how developer contributions can reduce the infrastructure burden currently being carried by ratepayers. Not supporting this motion is simply laughable. We work for the community and they should not be bearing the costs of future developments. This work should be a priority, and we've just heard that this takes 4 to 6 weeks. If we know that there's potential revenue streams, we should be pursuing that and exploring that. And we know that there's a big body of work to come and that there is funding in there in the order of $150,000. This is supplementary work that gives us a quick snapshot of what that looks like. And I think given that we're looking at an SRV, that this is really important information. I think the community want to understand it a little bit further. In April 2025, Council was already told that further work was required on new infrastructure contributions plan, informed by major planning works across the Goona, Ralinga and our growth areas. It even engaged an external consultant who's already started lots of this work, and we have that information ready in our hands. Now, the CEO report suggests another year or more, and I understand, we've had difficulty trying to recruit, but maybe we need to reach out to other councils who have done it recently and see who they use, because I'd say this really needs to be at the forefront of the work that we're doing, complementary to a special rate variation. The Goona-Ralinga is our major growth corridor, but infrastructure has not always kept pace with development out there. Developer contributions help pay for things like roads, footpaths, bike paths, drainage, parks and community facilities. And getting these contributions right means greater investment into Goona-Ralinga and better livability for the people who call that area home. If you look at our works that we have in here, there are many examples of future development that can be captured and also contribute towards, $22.7 million we have in here in our Thurgoona Link Road. We have $275,000 for placemaking in the central business district for Thurgoona. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in water infrastructure that we know is coming in the future. So to not explore this in a snapshot before an SRV, in my mind, is quite silly. Council keeps telling the community that significant work is underway on financial sustainability, and this needs to be part of the work. Developer contributions don't directly fix our operating deficit, but if ratepayer money or borrowings are paying for infrastructure that should be funded through developer contribution, it absolutely affects Council's bottom line. And before asking our community to pay significantly more through an SRV, Council must be able to show that every reasonable alternative has been properly explored, and it's time for action on this motion. I think it would be unreasonable if the community thought we sniffed at this and $20 million saving over 10 years is not minimal in my eyes. It's significant, and I think the community would see it that way as well. So understanding the maths of this in 4 to 6 weeks would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Any further speakers for or against or questions? Appears not. Just before we go back to the closer, I just want to raise a few interesting observations from tonight's discussion. Whilst there's been a lot of discussion about general fund and operational budget, which is where the deficit is, operational budget does fund interest on loans, and when we talk about significant borrowings and interest rates going up, that can be quite significant over a longer journey. And I mean, we're talking not in the hundreds of thousands, we're talking in the millions in some cases, depending on the amount you have to borrow. So I would have to agree that there is opportunities to influence the operational fund by increasing the SRV. Increasing the developer contributions, is it the be-all and end-all? I don't think so. But at the end of the day, if we're going to fund growth in our corridors, we need to consider all options. And to Ms Leopold's point, 2 weeks, 4 weeks or 6 weeks, I think that really, it's critical to understand where we need to go and what we need to be able to say to our community that we've exhausted all avenues. And we are, and I believe we are working as hard as we can, and I understand we're already doing work with developer contributions, but just to get that clarification and that transparency with our community, and just to clarify that with our community more clearly here in the chamber and in the community, is an important part through our engagement platforms. One thing that we need to note, and not sort of difference of responsibility, I mean, I was at the Local Government Australia conference the other week in Canberra, and the Minister McBain was talking about how this Labor government is giving $500 million over 4 years to 300 local governments to fund underground infrastructure. That works out at $1.6 million per council over 4 years. That wouldn't even run a sewer line from here to Young Street. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And essentially, there's $2 billion in total. $1.5 billion will go to the cities over 4 years. Even that is a ridiculous number. And this is supposed to support us as councils across Australia to put this very expensive infrastructure, sewer and water, under the ground. It's absolutely absurd. They want to grow 55,000 homes in New South Wales alone. That's a lot of money, and this is not enough money. And I think, again, we're feeling the stress of that through our growth. Growth is a great thing, but again, I really caution the fact that we can't ignore any opportunity to save money. And I think, again, when we're talking about interest rates, not in the hundreds of thousands to the millions, we need to consider what that could look like for the future of our city. And again, I know the staff are doing that work already, but it really is disappointing that the 30,000 ceiling is not available unless it's a greenfield site. So that means if we've already zoned the area, like we have much of Thurgoona Willinga, it doesn't fit that criteria at this point. And hopefully, through Ms Leopold's point, we can abrogate that by making representation to the Department of Planning and IPART about that proposition. Thank you. Councillor Clark, you have one more question before we close?
I do indeed. I've just remembered Councillor Hudson referred to other councils and shires that have fees, Wollongong and a couple of others that have fees significant above the 30,000. One is 50,000, another was 90,000. Councillor Hudson quoted. So how is it that our cap would be 30,000 for some, not all, and there are others across the state apparently with 50 or 90,000?
Because clearly they have planned forward and identified greenfield sites and applied for that cap to be removed so that they could develop those areas. That's obviously, we've zoned Thurgoona Willinga without having that foresight, and it's not entirely council's fault. Thurgoona Willinga was identified by the federal government many years ago, which then forced us to actually, as a council, grow that precinct. So essentially, from the outset, it was zoned residential, and any greenfield development needed to be something that was beyond the remit of growth. And particularly West Dapto and Ballina. Ballina has grown exponentially because of its closeness to Tweed Heads and Queensland. But at the end of the day, Ballina, it was a surfside community. I mean, clearly the council at the time decided we need to get in early and we need to say it's going to cost X, Y, Z amount of money to do that work. But we're already between a rock and a hard place. I would suggest. Would you suggest that, Mr. McGrath? Just checking with you.
You're not inviting me to disagree with you.
No, you can disagree as much as you like, Councillor.
Look, no, I think your statement is absolutely correct. The only thing I'd add to it is to truly understand why Ballina and Wollongong are charging those sorts of fees. There would be some due recognition of the development costs associated with the topography and a range of other issues. It would be based on site conditions, etc., and that would definitely come into play.
Okay. Councillor Hudson, do you wish to close?
I do, thank you, Mayor Mack. I think it's clear that Albury's, through decisions of various levels of government, through decisions of councils, historically, what's undeniable is that we are behind the eight ball. So our CEO gave us I'm certainly not going to hold him to strictly to the figures, but that we take in about $2 million a year in developer contributions. Just by way of one example, Thurgoona Park North, stages 1 to 5, now known as Brooklyn Fields, 423 lots. We collected, under the contributions scheme at the time, $10,278 per lot, which resulted in contributions of $4,347,594. If we had been charging at the 20,000 limit, which is the brownfield limit under IPART, then we would have collected $8.46 million. This council has left tens of millions of dollars, in my estimation, of revenue on the table over the last decade or more. That has to have impacted our financial position. And yes, that money is restricted, and yes, that money can't be used for operational purposes, and all of those things which I have noted in the motion. But at the end of the day, because of the impact of funding that infrastructure, which either we have had to fund through borrowing or through other means, or simply we haven't built it all and therefore the community has missed out on it, either way, it's a problem. Now, again, to Mr McGrath, under that simplified modelling that I believe the finance team had done, reducing our debt by the end of year 10 by $22 million. I mean, I don't know that we've heard too many other ideas that would reduce it by that much so far. We've cut our community and cultural grants. We've paused them, sorry. $50,000 a year. That's $500,000 over 10 years. 22 million. That's a order of magnitude. That's 2 orders of magnitude different. So, you know, I think we've had some questions about the intent of this motion. Well, we are considering an SRV, and for better or worse, I think that considering this SRV will be the most impactful decision that us as councillors will make during this term of council. And I don't want to speak for anyone else. I would like all of the information available to me that I can have before I make that final decision. And if it comes to it that I think that we are putting too much of a burden on our community when property developers could be paying more of their fair share, then I know personally that I will have I don't know whether I'll be able to support the SRV when the time comes. So, you know, we've heard some things, for example, from Councillor Glacken saying that, well, if we increase our developer contributions, then that money will be passed on to home buyers. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. The median house price in Albury is already between $700,000 and $1 million in 2026 per realestate.com. The median house price in Wodonga is $645,000. Now, I'm not suggesting that I want house prices to go up by 10 or 20 grand in Albury. I don't. But my point is that I think there's an awful lot more that goes into people's decision of where to buy than what the developer contributions charged by individual councils are. So it doesn't take a financial genius, I don't think, to realise that if we had collected millions, possibly tens of millions of more revenue over the last 12 years, that we wouldn't necessarily be in the position that we are now. I'm not suggesting that it's a silver bullet. I'm not saying that we can fund entirely our operational deficits off the back of the property developers. But what I am saying is, let's do some basic maths. Let's work out what the difference would be, and let's have a bit more information before we make a final determination on what the SRV will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion in the form of division. Those for the motion: Councillor Baker, Councillor Bullivant, Councillor Mack, Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Hudson, Councillor King. Those against? Councillor Glacken, Councillor Bukowski. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM10, presentation of deputations. There are none. CM11, reports and minutes of committee working parties. There are none. No documents for sealing. CM12. CM13, officers' reports for consideration. 13.1, development application 10.2012.317335.1, modification of consent renewable energy facility at Albury Waste Management Centre, 545 Mud Street, Hamilton Valley. Councillor Bullivant.
Thank you, Mayor Mack. I move the recommendation that Council A receives the contents of this report and B grants consent to development application 10.2012.31735.2, seeking to modify development consent 10.2012.31753.1, renewable energy facility, Albury Waste Management Centre, subject to conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 5 of this report.
Thank you. Seconder, thanks. Councillor King.
Second.
Thank you. Councillor Bullivant, do you wish to open debate on that item?
Thank you, Mayor Mack. This is just a modification of their development application, which is a procedural thing. The proponents at the landfill are wanting to put these battery banks in, and being 2026 and all the talk about renewables and solar panels and batteries, it's an ideal situation for us to hopefully our fellow councils look at this motion and approve the development. I think it's an ideal site, and it gives Albury City a segue into the renewals department in a big way. We know what happens up there with the methane generators, and this is just part of that process with the solar panels already inside. So I think overall it's a good plan for the development application change because it gives us a green look as a city council. So we talk about renewals. Everybody talks a big game, but I think we've got to put our foot into it and approve a development that's beneficial to everybody in the community.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor Hudson?
Thank you, Mayor Mac. In general, I'm very supportive of this and I concur with Councillor Bullivant's remarks. I have two questions. One is, I note in the report it refers to the power of the battery, I believe 2.9 megawatts. It doesn't refer to the capacity of the battery that I could see anywhere. So I was just wondering if we could have that clarified. And my second question, through you, Mayor Mac, to the most relevant member of staff. And my second question is, I just was interested in, given that the original development approved having a second generator and that this battery system would be going in that footprint, just why was the second generator not built?
Who do we got? Mr. Mitchell. Matt Wilson. No? Mr. Millett? Mr. Millett.
Through you, Mayor Mac, and thank you for the question. On the first part of that question, I'd have to take that on notice as far as the capacity of the storage of the unit. I'm not sure if that's outlined within the documentation provided as part of the DA. The second part, I'd suggest, and I'd be, this is my assumption, about the generation of power from the gas generation didn't require that second generator to do it. And at this point in time, they see more benefit in putting the battery storage within that existing footprint rather than take it up with a second generator.
It would be interesting to know why the second generator wasn't built from a technical standpoint. Was there less gas production than they anticipated, or is it the economics of it, that sort of thing? It's not going to affect my decision making. It just would be interesting to know. And I did read through the report and the associated document. I couldn't find anything about it. It just mentioned megawatts, not megawatt hours. So that's all. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to start off by saying I support the motion here this evening. It's a huge investment of $3.5 million by LMS Energy at the renewable energy facility. Given that LMS have been utilising this space and given that it's also Albury City Council's land, I can see since 2012, I'm just curious to know what the leasing arrangement is.
Mr. Millett.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor Mac. So yes, we have a commercial arrangement in place with LMS where it's a public-private partnership where we get royalties from the gas generation and the carbon credits that are created through that process. And we also get lease or licence payment for the use of the land.
Excellent. Thank you. Just one follow-up.
Follow-up.
Given that that started quite some time ago, when was the lease or the agreement reviewed last?
Mr. Millett.
Thank you for the question. So through this process, we did a heads of agreement in anticipation of this project. So we've reviewed the lease, and on sort of approval or disapproval of this, it'll be amended to account for this project.
So that lease agreement be coming back to the council group as well?
Yes.
Yes? Yeah, thank you. So,
oh, sorry, what was that?
The amended lease, will that come back
lease.
to the councils for...
No, it'd be a variation of an existing licence.
Okay. And when does that licence take the group through LMS through to?
It would be a 5-year.
Okay. Lovely, thank you.
Speaker 4, Councillor Hudson.
Thank you, Mayor Mac. I briefly speak in support of this motion. Bless you, Councillor Glacken. I think this is a hugely positive development. It's on an existing footprint that we expected to be developed with a gas generator, and now we're putting in a battery in there. It's a sizable investment, and I think it's just a really positive addition to our already fantastic waste management centre.
Thank you. Any more questions or speakers for? No, just to finish up, I actually had the privilege in 2013 of opening the LMS project with the methane generator, which was a product of the previous council that Councillor Glacken led, which was fantastic, because I think, again, the waste facility has been the shining example of what waste facilities should do, but also to process the methane to create energy for 4,500 homes at the time was considerable and well earned. And I did believe they were going to do a second generator, but clearly it hasn't stacked up for whatever reasons. But I think this alternative is a wonderful way of storing the electricity off peak and delivering it on peak at high peak times. So I think as a city and as a proposition, it's a really great proposition to demonstrate how a landfill can actually positively contribute to outcomes for cheaper electricity for our community. So Councillor Bullivan, did you wish to close debate?
Thank you, Mayor Mac. Just thanking my fellow councillors that have supported and spoken in support of this. I think it's a good project. It brings, as Deputy Mayor Callaghan said, it brings $3.5 million worth of development to that area, and also brings a few extra bodies in local work. So it's a win-win for the city. It's a win for the site. So hopefully we can commend this motion to council and go for it.
Thank you. I put the motion as a division. All those in favour? Councillor Baker, Councillor Bullivan, Councillor Mack, Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Hudson, Councillor Glacken, Councillor King and Councillor Bukowski. Thank you very much. The motion is carried. Okay. 13.2, Review of Alcohol-Free Zones and Alcohol Prohibited Areas 2026. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, I'd like to move the recommendation as a motion that Council endorses the project scope and stakeholder engagement plan, alcohol-free zones and alcohol prohibited areas review of 2026.
Thank you. Seconder, thanks. Councillor Baker.
Second the motion, Mayor Mac.
Thank you. Have a question. Do you wish to take the question, Councillor Glacken?
Question's fine, yeah.
Councillor Callaghan, question?
Thank you, and to the most relevant staff member. I was just hoping to have a little bit of clarification because alcohol prohibited areas have existed before, like QE2 Square, and I know we've done those as well on Hume Street for certain events, but Hobbletree Park, Noriel, at certain periods. Is the suggestion here that it is prohibited, an alcohol prohibited area all year, or just at certain times?
Ms Kay.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Callaghan, and through you, Mayor Mac. This is the stakeholder engagement plan, which will take the consultation process out to the community when the draft alcohol-free zone and alcohol prohibited area comes to council in September. Mm-hmm. So what is described is the current situation in the report. So the current, for background, the current alcohol-free areas and the current alcohol-free zones.
So I suppose currently the prohibited areas don't exist. So down at Noriel Park, it's not prohibited at all times?
Ms Kay.
Thank you for the question, through you, Mac. At Noriel Park, we have an alcohol prohibited area for Australia Day from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and at all other times people are allowed to consume alcohol within appropriate manners.
Thank you, Ms Code.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to open debate?
Thank you. This is a policy that we've had for a number of years, brought in, I think, almost 2 decades ago, the first part of it, and it's been massaged a little bit over time, but the view or the reason it was originally brought in was to better ensure community safety, and better assist with community behaviour, or dare I say it, community misbehaviour at times. So it was really a community outcome that we were wanting to achieve when we first brought in the alcohol-free zones and then the alcohol-prohibited areas. This needs to be reviewed every couple of years. This is going out for or this will go out for community consultation. That's why the report tells the community what we have in our existing plan. My understanding from memory of an update to us by the police after one of the Australia Day events. It was confirmed by the police that it was of assistance, and my understanding is it was also of assistance with one of the local car exhibitions that come to town, one of the groups that comes to town. It was also of assistance. And so I believe that we should be supporting this into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. There appears to be no further speakers or questions. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.3, the draft compliance and enforcement policy public exhibition submissions. Thank you. Councillor Billman.
Thank you, Mayor Mac. I move the recommendation that Council A rescinds the existing draft compliance and enforcement policy, and B adopts the draft compliance and enforcement policy with the amendment of the word biennial to biennial on page 11.
Thank you. Seconded, please. Councillor King.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Bullen, do you wish to speak to that?
I just reserve the right. Thank you, Mayor Mac.
Thank you. There appears to be no questions or debate. Did you wish to close debate, Councillor Bullen?
Thank you, Mayor Mac. It's just the replacing of a word in the motion, in the policy. It's just only replacing words, so it's not too much. And we've had speakers tonight about our draft compliance and enforcement policy, and I'm happy with the policy. I've got much more to say about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. Those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. We have 13.4, which is the review, feedback and complaints management policy and associated procedure. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, to move the recommendation as a motion that Council A endorse the draft feedback and complaints management policy, B place the draft policy on public exhibition for a period of up to 28 days, and if no feedback is received seeking amendments, the existing feedback and complaints management policy will be rescinded, and the draft feedback and complaints management policy will be adopted and placed on the community's policy register.
Seconder, thanks. Councillor Bullivan.
Happy to second, Mayor Mac.
Thank you. Councillor Cohen, you put your hand up. Councillor Glacken, did you wish to open debate?
Yes. This is, again, another policy that we have at Council. It's important that we have a process. We have to ensure that the process is robust, and we're putting this out for community consultation for our community to confirm whether or not they believe this is the case or whether there is some areas that might be assisted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No further speakers for or against. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Officer reports for noting. They're listed in the agenda as being asked and answered. CM15 delegates report. Do you have a question in that spot?
I do. Sorry, I can't get it up on Docs and Tab. I believe my question was in regards to the cost of the heritage review, and it was said that we received funding and there was no number given at the time. It appeared on notice with $20,000 that we received in funding to complete the heritage review. I just thought that was quite low. I haven't seen any consultant's fee in the order of $20,000 ever. So I was just curious to know, you know, what are we really expecting that to come in at, and is that adequate?
Yeah. Here you go. Mr. Wilson, do you have a response for that?
Never. It says it's considered to be $20,000 is adequate. I'm just considering the depth and breadth of the work, and it took 2 years to get there. It just seemed quite a low number in grant funding. Yeah.
Ms. Leopold.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Callaghan, through you, Mayor Mac. So the majority of the work's undertaken by staff in-house, which it does say at the top there. The $20,000 is for specific heritage advice where we need to refer around certain elements. So that's why the team has deemed $20,000 to potentially be sufficient for the project at this point in time.
Thank you.
So just on that, the 3 staff part-time, 1.5 full-time equivalent, that's on top of the 20K, is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, we're up to delegates' reports for noting. There aren't any. Notice of urgent business, councillors. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor Mac. If I could have up on the screen. This is an acknowledgement, and I'd like to read it.
Yeah.
On behalf of the councillors, staff and residents of Albury, I would like to formally acknowledge the performances of Albury swimmers Mia Hogan and Sienna Tui for their outstanding performances at the 2026 Glasgow Commonwealth Games from the 23rd of July to the 2nd of August 2026. Mia was the youngest member of the Australian Commonwealth Games squad, qualifying at just 14 years of age. Mia competed in the S13, 50 and 100 metre freestyle and was very impressive in the pool and has shown she has a bright future in the sport. Sienna won a gold medal in the women's 4x100 medley relay, silver in the 50 metre breaststroke and bronze in the 100 metre breaststroke at 17 years of age, and has confirmed her status as Australia's top female breaststroker. Congratulations to our swimmers, Mia and Sienna, and all the best in your future endeavours. And I'd just like to also say that we're really incredibly proud of them. They go to school here, they live here, and to see them doing so well on the international stage is really heartwarming. And yeah, as a city, they deserve our thanks and for all the hard work they've put in.
Thank you, Councillor Baker, and I share your sentiments. It's a testament to their experience and their ability, but also to their families for that support they've given them to that journey and will continue to support. It's an amazing achievement, and I think we all watched it and all thought it was quite amazing coming from Albury, but more particularly the individual nature of swimming is really all about ability and resilience, so well done. Okay, and thank you for the urgent business motion, Councillor Baker. We have no other urgent business. We do not have a confidential motion. I close the meeting at 7:32. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff.